TSUTigers.com, another Off the Grid, and today we're sitting with Frank Pillow Sr. What years were you at Tennessee State University?
I actually came to Tennessee State University fall of 1963, and I played for legendary Coach John Merritt, specifically under Coach Gillum, because I played on defense. I came to school to play in. I thought I was going to catch touchdown passes, but I ended up playing safety. And I was redshirted in 1963, and in '64, I was his starting safety. And midway that year, I took a bad fall, and I fractured my cervical vertebrae. So from that point on, I didn't play anymore. I actually rehabbed it. It took 12 months. It took 12 months to rehab, and then I just went to school. And after school, I thought I was going to be a school teacher, but I ended up working for UPS. I worked for United Parcel Service for 21 years as one of their managers, and then I retired.
And obviously you grew up in the Nashville area, so and you went to Burrell High School. And kind of tell us a little bit about the experience of growing up and being around Tennessee State University and how you came to Tennessee State University. And tell us a little bit about your time at Pearl as well.
Well, you know, I sort of lived in the Tennessee State University community. TSU is located on 35th. Back then it was Centennial. Now it's John A. Merritt Boulevard, 35th. I lived on 31st, which is 4 blocks and a fraction. So being in the community and being an athlete, TSU had great athletics. They had Olympic champions, they had great basketball teams, and they had great football teams. And I could actually hear the games as they were playing as a little boy where I lived. And it was very exciting. I had an aunt that lived like 1 block from the stadium. And I used to visit her at times. She had a son that was my age. And make a long story short, the connection to TSU was so strong as a kid. I just always wanted to play something at TSU. Now, at Pearl High School, we had 3 sports for the boys back then. We had football, we had basketball, and we had track. I played it all. I played it all, and I cannot ever remember not staying after school. Every day I would stay after school because I was practicing something. I did well in all sports. In basketball, we had 1 state championship on that team I was on. And also, something I'm very proud of, we had a national championship. And that was in 1963. They don't have that now. Our basketball team was second to none. Our track team that I was the captain on, we actually won 2 state championships during my tenure in high school at Pearl High School. Back then, I ran the 220, the 440. I was state champion in the pole vault, and I also won the discus 2 years in a row there at Pearl High School. Now those things I learned to do from a guy named Ralph Boston, who was an Olympic champion at TSU. He had aspirations on being an Olympic champion that people didn't know. He was a little small. He couldn't throw the shot put or the discus quite as far. But he threw the javelin well. He did everything else well. But I used to train with Ralph, and Ralph taught me how to do those things. And but I had a multiple choice. But I watched TSU in 1962 come away with 2 wins and 8 losses. And that very next year, Coach John Merritt came to TSU with Coach Gillum. That was a year I walked on. I didn't have a scholarship. I walked on. And as I was there practicing, Coach Merritt asked me about what room was I in. And I told Coach, I said, Coach, I'm not in a room. I live over there, I said. And he said, over there, where? And he thought I was being funny. and I was pointing toward where 31st was. And so he said, okay, I'll fix that. So he went and got one of his assistants. His name was Dynamite. And Dynamite came and he got me a room. And from that point on, I was on that football team.
Tell us a little bit about, playing for Coach Merritt, and just kind of some of the things. And obviously, we benefit now. We know the stories now of how great he was, but obviously that was the beginning. When you were here, was the beginning. Kind of tell us a little bit about how that structure happened and how all of a sudden he turned the program around into such a powerhouse.
Coach Merritt was a genius. A lot of people doesn't give him credit for being that. They thought everything was controlled by Coach Gillum and Coach Coleman and the other assistants. But if you would talk to those men, if they could tell you, they would tell you that Coach Merritt was the leader of everything. Now, what they did, and the whole scheme of things, was to outwork their opponents. We practiced twice a day back then. Plus, we had another practice, which was strictly a skull session. Films and just learning the defense or learning the offense. So we actually had 3-a-day practices. We had no weights back then. We just ran and we did isometrics back then. And everybody was very talented also. I must say that, Jose. They had all-state ball players that came from everywhere. And back then, all of the black players especially, they went to Grambling Southern, Texas Southern, they went to Alcorn A&M, Florida A&M, Tennessee State. And it was a collection of all-star black players back then. And I mean, the teams were packed. Coach Merritt, he got who he wanted. He got great players. So to make his team, it was so special. To make his team was a dream come true. To be on that team was more than a dream. It was a gift from heaven almost, if you wanted to be a good athlete. So what happened for me back then, and the hard work that Coach Gillum and Coach Merritt had put on us, to be placed on that field as one of his starters, it was a dream come true. Now, the first year I was redshirted. I was redshirted the first season, but the second season I was Coach Gillum's starting safety.
Now, you talk about how great the basketball was at the time, how great some of the football was, but how can you explain during that time, some of the great athletes that were on the women's track team, some of the great athletes that were at Tennessee State, a part of football, and talk about some of the people you played with, and as well as even knew you went to school with in women's track, in men's track, in basketball.
Which some of the women's track you took for granted because they were just walking around just like you and I. But these were world champions. Wyoming Tyson was in school with us. Edith McGuire was in school with us. I'm naming you Olympic champions. Vivian Brown. I think now Wilma, the famous Wilma Rudolph, she came from a little school in Clarksville called Bird House. Wilma was around us, and I used to see her, and when I was at Pearl, I saw her train. But when I got to TSU, she was gone. But I used to watch her train as well. I used to watch a lot of those girls train under Coach Temple. I know him. He and I used to dress almost next door at the YMCA. He had a collection of girls like Coach Merritt had a collection of young men playing football. These were the best runners in the world. And we took it for granted, but they were just walking up and down the street like everybody else, but they could run and beat everybody in the world. And we knew them. We actually knew them. And they were normal people per se, but then when it came to competing, they were extraordinary.
Now, your connection with Tennessee State, football especially, has stayed, basically since day one. You even have connection to the coaching staff now, and obviously during that time period when he was a player, you have a connection to that as well. Can you speak a little bit about
Rod's father? Rod's father was our captain when I came to TSU. Bob played middle linebacker. He actually played. He stood right at 6 feet, and he played at 245, and he was our captain. Very smart. He was a hitter. Rod has his personality, that jovial thing. That's how his dad was. I can tell you, I knew when Rod's mother was carrying him in her stomach. They were courting in school. The connection with Rod's father connects me with Rod, because Rod played with my son when he was a receiver at TSU, and Frank went on to do well as a football player. He was a little guy. He wasn't big, but he had a big heart, and he could catch that rock. Frank went on to play with Vinny Testaverde at Tampa Bay. He caught passes, and then he went to Canada and played with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and they won actually a Grey Cup. And but he had a great career at TSU. And as I reflect back, what is most memorable is that shootout that Frank had with Jerry Rice in the Circuit City Classic in Indiana one year. My son-in-law at the time, Gilbert Renfro, was the quarterback for us. And Jerry Rice was playing for Mississippi Valley. And that game, I believe Frank caught 224 yards worth of passes that night in that dome. We lost that game, but it was a hell of a game. But my connection with TSU continues on today as Rod does what he does, and I'm so proud of Rod. I have a booster organization that I'm proud to be the president of. It's called the Untouchables. It's a men's social club, and we travel to every away game that Rod plays. We have gone over 300,000 miles in these buses. We don't care if he loses. We don't care if he ties. We hope he wins, but whatever it is, we would travel to see the team play and watch Rod coach. And we have a special tailgate that we are so proud of. Every time we go, we're going to feature. And we try to invite Rod and his kids, if they can do that, come by and eat when they get through. But most of the time, they got schedules, you know. They have to get back. But yeah, we're getting ready to do it this year. When the team rolls, we'll be rolling too. And we generally take 2, sometimes 3 buses.
Now, you talk about, obviously the booster group that you do now, and we've asked many before of the former athletes, kind of the relationships that were created when you were a part of Tennessee State University, and some of the teammates and so on, and the opportunities to get together and see each other again. What kind of opportunities have you had to stay in contact with some of your fellow classmates?
It's like this. Leon Moore, who's on Rod's staff today, I don't see him enough. But when I do see him, like today, we have a lot to talk about. He is by far the most connectable person for me. Once a year at homecoming, we got this select group of ex-players that before homecoming, we get together and we plan on what we're going to do for homecoming. Generally, about 10 of them will meet at the parade, homecoming parade. And we have already, maybe 6 months ahead, we've got our money together and we get a suite. We get a suite at LP Field for homecoming. And we'll have all the food and beverages, and a lot of them bring their wives with them. So this has been going on now for maybe 5 years, and it grows every year. And we have vowed to continue to keep this going on. And hopefully, in years to come, it'll get larger and larger. Last year, I think, if my memory serves me correct, we had 2 suites. We actually had 2 suites, and if you added up both suites, it'd be maybe 25 of us working together. And it's a great collection.
And just a couple more, but just kind of getting a little look back at Tennessee State over the years. You know, what can you look at the university now? Obviously, there's been a lot of change. You know, the campus has grown, everything's gone. You know, obviously over the last 40 years and such. But just kind of give us some memories of, well, actually, just kind of give us your thoughts about the growth of Tennessee State.
It's beautiful. We thought we saw what we were looking at as a campus back in the 60s when I was in high school. That was state of the art, and probably it was, because I can remember going out there as a very young kid on Saturday mornings, and I'd slip into Kingsland Garden, slip in. They had a room with weights in it. They had a room you could dance in for dancers. They had a room for boxing. They had this beautiful gymnasium floor that was awesome. And we knew professional players like Dick Barnett who played, and some more wonderful ball players. They had a 7-footer from Chattanooga. They called him Dean Pole. It was unbelievable what you could see if you went out there. But then the university was awesome. But if you look at it now, and you look back, and you look at the growth, you look at the gentry, you look at the wonderful indoor complex that they can work out in, you look at the track, which is rubberized now, you look at the renovation of of the field, of the hole, you look at the little small jumbotron they got. You look at where the baseball field used to be, and now it's a dormitory. You look at all the new dormitories. You look at everything that they've got now, and you can appreciate the progress that Tennessee State has made. The campus is absolutely gorgeous. If I could turn back the clock, I'd be back out there at TSU. I'd be right there. I'd be right there.
Well, before we let you go, as we ask everybody, we always come back, and this might be a tough one for you, but what is your fondest moment? If we could just ask one moment, what was your fondest memory or moment of Tennessee State University?
As a football player, I would never forget beating Florida A&M in the hole the night when they had the fastest human in the world playing, Bob Hayes. That night I was on the chain. One of my good buddies, Alvin Coleman, and I were working the chain game. That year I was redshirt. The year was 1963. But here is what was so special about that. As a redshirt, that whole week on the practice field, and I played on the practice team, I wore the number 22. That was Bob Hayes' number. This is the fastest man in the world. I ran his plays. Every play that he ran, I ran those plays that week in practice. And so to have been given the opportunity to wear a jersey that was going to be worn by the fastest man in the world, and I had to keep that speed on that practice line, it actually was probably the highlight of anything that I ever did. And what happened that night when they got here, I felt like I was a part of that win, because I had set those plays up for those boys all that week, and to have been Bob Hayes that week and to win that game with Nolan Smith running that TD back when he ran the kickoff back, it was the most awesome thing I've ever seen, ever been around, ever felt, and we talk about it every time we get together right now. We talked about it today. That was it.
That's great. Well, Mr. Pillow, we definitely appreciate your time, and we thank you for talking about Tennessee State University and giving us a great history of it. Thank you for being a part of TSU Tigers.
Thank you so much, Jose.